Okay, awesome. Let's get started. Well, welcome to Bridge Elections FAQ. It's a live discussion where we're going to answer your questions. I'm Isabel Lohman. I'm the education reporter here at Bridge, Michigan. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan newsroom, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Today we have Lauren Gibbons as well as Jordyn Hermani. They are both Capitol reporters. They've been doing a ton of reporting on this upcoming election, and they've also been answering a ton of your questions. We're going to be recording this event, and you'll also be able to see a recap of this event on our website at bridgemi.com. If you want to submit a question to our next FAQ session, you can do that. We're going to throw the link in the chat, and you'll be able to ask questions there. Let's get started. One of the first things that we heard a lot about was questions around who is on the ballot in 2024. But before we get there, Lauren, you were just on Mackinac Island. Can you tell me what you were there for in like 10 seconds?
Yeah, so the Mackinac Policy Conference is kind of a confluence of some of the state's biggest business and political leaders. Especially in an election year, there's quite a bit of chatter, but there's also a lot of talk about some of the issues facing Michigan.
Okay, what was one thing that was surprising that happened while you were there?
Well, I think the most surprising thing was the conference was wrapping up and then we got the Trump verdict for the trial. So one thing about Mackinac that's convenient as a reporter is you're walking around and pretty much any politician you might want to talk to at any given time is just there, is just on an island where they can't leave unless the ferry schedule is open. So I think that was the most surprising aspect of it to me, was just walking around and trying to get people's first impressions as they digested some pretty big political news.
When you were asking people questions, at any point were you the one to break the news to them that Trump was convicted?
Oh yeah, definitely. There were a few people who were just like, "Whoa, I hadn't heard that yet. Let me think about it for a second." But the responses were pretty typical, based on political party. You're not seeing a whole ton of variation. Not a lot of minds are changing based on this verdict.
Gotcha. So one of the other things at this policy conference is this debate. We had a reader who asked the question, why didn't the three candidates for U.S. Senate with the highest name recognition plan to participate in the debate? And this reader said that was very disappointing to the Michigan electorate. Lauren, do you have an answer?
Yeah, well, as someone who's covering the U.S. Senate race, it was also disappointing to me. I was really hoping to see all these candidates on stage debate each other in a bipartisan fashion. Now, this was scheduled to be a bipartisan debate with the top 6 candidates from both parties on stage. They were all invited. But then a couple of prominent candidates dropped out. Mike Rogers and Justin Amash declined invitations, and then Alyssa Slotkin on the Democratic side also ended up dropping out at that time because some of her, highest profile opponents were not going to be on the stage. So at that point, you heard from a lot of the candidates who did accept, also being pretty frustrated, not getting that opportunity to debate. But I guess we'll see if any other opportunities crop up in terms of GOP or Democratic primary debates.
Gotcha. So that's on the federal level. We also have state house races. We had a reader who asked, what are the 5 to 10 closest state house races and what factors are most likely to influence the outcome of each? I want to narrow that in a little bit. Jordyn, let's start with you. We know that the state house is a big deal this year. Right now, Democrats hold a 2-person majority. Republicans want to flip that so they can be in control of that state house again. Can you tell me one race that you're looking into and that you're going to be keeping a close eye on?
Yeah, actually, downriver, there are 2 districts, but one in specific, House District 27, which is represented by Jamie Churches. She's a former teacher. She only won that election, I believe, by something like 600 votes. She had one of the closest elections results in the state. And because of that, eyes are going to be on the downriver district this year. Part of her district is split Democrat and Republican. I mean, she made gains in, I believe it was Wyandotte, but then actually lost in Gibraltar. There were many more Republican votes there. So, I mean, especially with redistricting, this is the first time that we're going to see, this is a full year of campaigning within these districts. So that's definitely going to be one to watch.
For sure. Lauren, what about you?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are going to be a handful of districts in both Oakland and Macomb counties that are going to be watched pretty closely by observers. They're all going to be pretty tight, as well as the Lakeshore. But the one that I am interested in right now is the one that was actually, I believe, the closest race in 2022, and that's the 103rd district up in Traverse City. That district, I think it's fair to say, is one of the reasons that we have a Democratic majority legislature right now. Just a couple hundred votes split incumbent state rep Betsy Kofia with her Republican opponent. So that's one that I'm really interested in. Redistricting really changed that up north district. You have pretty Democratic heavy areas like Traverse City roped in with less so rural areas that lean more heavily towards Republicans. So it's almost 50-50 when you look at the numbers, and that's one that I'll be keeping a close eye on.
Gotcha. As someone who covers education, it's interesting to see what type of bills made it to the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee under Democrats versus under Republicans. So I'm sure we're all looking at that really closely. Jordyn, this week you answered 2 questions related to campaign finance and personal finance disclosure information. I know that's an important topic. One question that our readers shared was, does the state or federal government make it easy to find information about campaign donations or personal financial disclosures? And how do you find this information?
So the short answer is kind of. There are 2 state websites where you can look into individuals' campaign finance. So the donations that they receive, the contributions that they get, as well as you can look up their personal financial disclosures. However, with respect to personal financial disclosures, they do not have to fill those out very thoroughly. So you can be seeing a lot of zeros in areas where you would expect to find information. Not to mention that the campaign finance website, the personal disclosure website itself is a little clunky. It's still being worked on. But luckily, we did create, as you mentioned, an FAQ that does include all the necessary links for state and federal filings. Same thing with the federal level. It is a little bit difficult to find, but it is out there. And especially if you visit our website and our story that we did put up, we explain how to get there as seamlessly as possible.
Gotcha. That's a great plug. We have this reader voter guide on our website. It's free. Anyone can access it. It has information about the upcoming election. It has information about personal finance disclosure. It has information about how to vote, where you can get information about your local candidates. All of that stuff's on our website, bridgemi.com. Jordyn, you just mentioned these personal financial disclosure portals, but I have a question for you, Lauren. When it comes to judges, we had 2 readers who had questions about how we find out more about judges and what their politics are. One reader asked, as the courts have become more partisan, how do we understand the judges' politics who are looking to be represented? And then we had a different person who asked where they can find accurate information on judicial candidates. Can you tell me where we can find this info?
Yeah, so I think that's admittedly 2 different questions. So I'll start and just explain that especially at the state Supreme Court level, most of these judicial races are technically nonpartisan. And so one thing that any judicial candidate will remind you is that doesn't count if you're voting straight party ticket. You have to pick the judges out individually. Otherwise, you will not be voting for those races. Now, the way that the major party candidates do it for the state Supreme Court is they select their nominees for the party at the respective party conventions. So that's one pretty easy way to tell, if a judge's personal views might align closely with your party, as if they were nominated by either the Democrats or Republicans. Now, in terms of finding accurate information about judicial candidates, since it is, especially once you get down to the local levels, it's admittedly a little bit more difficult. They're not necessarily going to say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, because that's not what judges do. So there's a couple ways to look for it beyond local news, which is one aspect I would definitely recommend looking for. You could also check out the League of Women Voters. They publish a voter guide each year. You could also check out endorsements based on other judicial candidates or former judges often weigh in on some of these races. But then also you can use that state or federal campaign finance database to see if a candidate has made any political contributions in the past. So those are all kind of ways to tell, what might be a good option for a voter.
Sounds like you have to sift through a little bit of information to find out those politics. Well, thank you all for answering these questions. So today we've covered the upcoming Senate race, state house races, how to find information about judges' politics, as well as how to find personal financial information about lawmakers and candidates. We are going to have more of these Bridge Elections FAQs in the future. We want to make sure that we're answering your questions, that we're giving you the answers that you need to make informed decisions at this next election. So if you want to submit your own question, you can do that at our website, bridgemi.com. You can sign up for our free Politics Watch newsletter at bridgemi.com, and we'll have all the answers to today's questions in that newsletter as well. Our reporters today have answered a bunch of questions, but we have more on our website. We've talked about how the state lottery affects the school budget. We've talked about how elected officials are thinking about the Israel-Hamas war, and we've answered other questions. We're doing this every single day. So you can read all of this at our website. Thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for the next Bridge Elections FAQ. Thank you.